welcome to Dark Horses. I'm Daniela Garaycoechea.
And I'm Sabina Cobo. Thanks so much for joining our podcast today. Hi, Dani. How have you been?
Good. How about you?
Good. And full of work. It's been a crazy week, but we are super lucky today to connect with a super special guest.
Yes. Today we have Pamela Flanagan, Diva Lex, who's here with us. She is a rock star attorney and, like us, has a huge passion for horses and is really involved in the polo world. Hi, Pamela. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us today. And we just wanted to ask you a few questions about your career, your life, your involvement with horses. And before you became Pamela the attorney, was there anything specific or an experience that shaped you for the woman that you are today? Was it being with horses when you were young? Anything that you can share with us on that?
Definitely. I think there's an element for all horse girls that you feel that horses shape your life in some way. You know, as a young woman, a young girl with horses, you learn a lot about confidence, independence, responsibility. And those are the kind of things that most sports or most activities, hobbies may not exude as much as being involved with horses. It's a 1,200-pound animal. And, as a little girl, you're 60, 70 pounds and you're in control of this thing. So there's definitely a level of confidence that horses lend to young girls. And I would definitely say that they added a lot to mine.
How many years was it with horses?
I started riding when I was about 4 years old.
Amazing.
So
very similar to me. I started at 4 as well. How did it shape your future decisions?
Well, my future decisions were definitely shaped by horses because I always wanted to be around them, right? So it affected how I spent my time in my youth. It affected in a lot of ways where I went to law school because I wanted to stay involved with the polo program I had helped start. And coming down to South Florida for polo is how I met my husband. So it's affected my life in a number of ways.
It was part of your life. It's been part of your life since you were a little girl.
Exactly. And it's not a family thing. Most people, from my experience in the horse world, are introduced to it through their families because it's a family tradition. Their mom rides, their dad rides. Nobody in my family rides. I think it was just an innate passion that I've always been drawn to.
Well, and you're passing that passion on to your daughter. I mean, we see her, she's always constantly looking for horses too now.
Yes. She's a horse fanatic. There's no doubt. She definitely likes horses and dogs more than people. I don't blame her, but she's addicted. She loves it. And she has zero fear. I don't think she needs a confidence boost. She has plenty of that. Now,
let's focus a little bit about your law practice. So you've worked mostly in real estate property tax law. That's something that's definitely always been more of a male-driven career or environment. What was the hardest part of getting into that type of law? And did being involved in polo and with horses, like you said, that it gave you confidence, do you think that also gave you that push to get into that type of law?
I think so. And also from horses, a big part of it was I have 4 older brothers. So I've always been in a male-dominated industry, if you will. My family has always been male-dominated. I'm number 5. My brothers are all older than me. We're all very close in age. So without a doubt, taking the law route was, I wouldn't say easier because of my involvement in horses, but it definitely set me up for the same sort of challenges that you might experience in a male-dominated industry. Although I will say law school was 50-50. Our class was 50% women, 50% men. So I didn't feel outnumbered in that regard. However, in the property tax world, I mean, we were just at a convention last week and it is 90% men. When we were there meeting with clients, it was myself and a few of my colleagues, some of which are women. And I think of the 400 people that were attending, there were maybe 15 women. It was definitely male dominated.
And what made you go into property tax?
It's been a family thing. So my dad was involved.
So that was a family thing, not the horses.
Pardon?
Yes,
that was a family thing. Not the horses, no, but law, yes. My dad was an attorney. He was a prosecutor in downtown Chicago for many years. And so we followed in his footsteps. A lot of us, 5 of my 6 siblings became attorneys.
All involved in real estate property tax law or different areas of law?
Some different areas, but primarily yes.
Mm-hmm.
Pamela, did you mention where you're based right now when we started?
Right now I'm based in Jupiter, Florida.
Oh, you're here in Florida as well.
Yes.
One of the things that gets my attention is your involvement, of course, with polo. Did it shape also the way that, for instance, you've learned to compete when you have to compete in your profession? Is there a relationship between one or the other?
I would actually say the opposite. I think that my profession helped me be a better competitor on the field, if I'm being candid, because what I have found with polo is it's a hobby for most people. There are a lot of incredible professionals, but for most people that play like myself, it is a hobby. And oftentimes people treat it as a hobby, but very competitive people want to win. And I have found that with polo, it's not one of those things where you just show up for a game and you play and hope all goes well. What I've learned through work in my professional career is the importance of strategy and preparation. And when you implement strategy, preparation and organization into a polo team, you can see how clearly it affects the success of your team. We've been really fortunate in the past several years to have been very successful in the Women's US Open, which has kind of been my key tournament that I participate in. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily because of one specific factor, but what I would say is that a huge factor that plays into it is our level of preparation in advance compared to a lot of other teams' preparation. We're probably equally just as talented as a lot of the teams we compete against, and the horses are probably relatively similar in terms of the talent, but what sets us apart and what I've always prided myself and my team on is the strategy and the preparation and the organization that we execute long before the tournament ever starts.
Well, I think that comes from being a lawyer. I mean, a lot of it is preparation and getting everything in order. So that probably shapes you on that part. Now, I know that you give back a lot. You have rescued horses. Your primary pony is a rescue. What got you involved in that?
You know, it's funny. It kind of just fell into my lap unknowingly, and then it's just something I was so passionate about. It just happened. But I had just graduated law school. I had no money. I had just started working. I couldn't afford to just go play polo. But I was dying to have horses in my life. And because I was no longer in the II programs in college or law school, I had to pay for horses and they're expensive. So I found myself after hours scrolling online, looking for cheap horses for sale. And I came across a young horse. I figured I had enough experience where if I bought a young, healthy horse with potential, I could train it myself to be a polo pony. And I thought that would be a great challenge, but also a great learning experience. So during my many hours of late night scrolling for horses online, I came across a beautiful little black and white paint. She was said to be about 3 years old. She was healthy, and she was like $500, $400, $500. And I was a little bit confused because if you're in the horse world, that doesn't happen, you know. So you're a little bit skeptical right off the bat. So the next day I picked up my phone, I called the number with the listing, and I found out that it was a horse slotted for Mexico for slaughter. And although this had been happening for a number of years, and although this was a huge part of the equine industry, this was not something that I was familiar with. I was incredibly ignorant in terms of the horse slaughter industry in the United States at that time. So when I asked why the horse was $500, he basically said, well, that's the meat price. She's kind of, she's not a very heavy horse. We go based on weight. So if you want to buy her for her meat price, you can go ahead and do so. Otherwise, we'll get that anyway. And we
oh my God, and there was an ad for that.
Oh, yeah, there was
an
ad.
But it didn't say, of course, it's illegal to say. But then what I'm guessing is that they tell the prospect buyer about
That's
it.
right. That's right. And that actually developed later. So what it ended up happening was, this was very early on. I want to say this was 2014. No, this was, 2016. And so at that time, there wasn't a lot of public awareness around it. And so I bought this horse and I began to rehabilitate her. But I caution everyone who hears this, because since that time, these buyers have become more sophisticated in what they do, and what they began to do shortly thereafter was they would increase the prices from $500 to $3,000. Otherwise, the horse is going to die tomorrow, and it would be this whole bit of sensationalism to pull at heartstrings and make people overpay for these slaughter horses, which would then fund the pockets of these kill pen buyers. So whenever people ask me how I got into it, I like to share that I got into it early before the sensationalism kind of took place, but I caution people to fall into that trap of overpaying for these rescue horses and funding the improper channels that perpetuate the issue.
It's crazy to think sometimes that things like that still happen, and that a lot of it, it's either not talked about or people are just not aware of it. So the fact that you bring it up and that you do caution people and that you talk about it a lot, I've seen a lot of your interviews where you talk about this. I think it does help to create awareness on this whole issue and how important it is to pay attention to what you're doing and who you're buying from too.
Yeah, and what I've learned through all of this too is you can make a big impact by rescuing a horse, of course, but you can also make a big impact by protecting the horses that are already in your care. When you retire a horse, where is that horse going? Who is it going to? Don't let it be one of those horses that ends up on one of those trucks. That in itself would be rescuing a horse. You can end the cycle by just ensuring that your horse is in the right hands post its athletic career, during retirement, post-retirement, whatever that looks like. Check in on the horses that you've already sold. See where they're at. Brand your horses, microchip your horses. And if you do want to rescue a horse, now go through the verified rescue channels that exist. There are a number of rescues all over the country that do great work. And there's so many ways to maintain involvement instead of doing kind of the more risky alternative, which is what I did at the time, and going straight to the pens to rescue a horse. My perspective now and where I push people now is go to the rescue organizations. And before you even do that, check in on your old horses to make sure they're okay.
Yeah, that is true. So it's an interesting fact that you bring up that a lot of times people, they're in the sport, they whether it's jumping or polo, they're in that sport, and then afterwards, what happens to the horses? So that's a very interesting perspective to think about also.
That's a big part of it. And that's a big part of, most people don't realize what happens to their horses 2, 3, 5 years after they sell them. That one element of tracking your horses and making sure they're in good hands could prevent a number of horses from going down that path.
What would be your recommendation for the people who are listening regarding success? Because I think that not only your career as an attorney, but also your career as a polo player and as an advocate for rescue horses, and as you just said, for the horses that you own yourself, that they're just rescued because we own them, right? Because we take care of them. They're part of that cycle. What would be if you could give some type of advice to people on success?
Well, I would love to get some advice on success and what that looks like. I feel like I'm still working to have success, in a number of ways. Success is different in different industries, right? Success with a rescue horse, for example, could be getting that horse healthy enough to have a rider and walk on a trail. Or success could be taking a horse and turning it into a world champion polo pony. I think success varies, and I think it depends on, it's industry specific, it's goal specific. I think more than success, it's about doing what you're passionate about. Because if you are able to do what you're passionate about, you will feel success either way. I've rescued a number of horses, and a number of horses have had different outcomes. One of them was a US Open playing pony, and another one went to a therapeutic riding program years after because candidly, she just wasn't that athletic and she wasn't cut out for it. But I would say both of those situations were successful. I didn't exactly have expectations for any of the horses. My success was based on my passion for helping these horses, and I was able to be successful in that.
Now, in law, a lot of people sometimes, they think when they're looking that they want to be an attorney, they focus on, the typical, I want to be a litigator, I want to be a criminal attorney, a commercial attorney, but they don't see like all these other types of fields that law has. So for someone who's thinking about property tax, what's something that you would tell them, okay, this is what you need to do, or this is something that you really need to like to make sure that this is the type of law that you could do? Yeah,
it's interesting because property tax specific, I've never met anyone who said, I love property tax analysis. I haven't, but it is important what you said to expand upon that, in that a law degree gives you a lot of options. If you want to be a doctor and you go to medical school, your option is to be a doctor. Fantastic, you've completed your dream. With a law degree, I feel like it has a lot of flexibility in how you utilize the skills that you acquire throughout law school. So whether it's a niche market like property taxes, or for me, for example, I use my law degree often when drafting sponsorship contracts, corporate sponsorship. I can draft contracts, I can help friends with contracts or clients, but the idea of having a law degree doesn't pigeonhole you into one single profession. You don't have to be a litigator, like you said. You don't have to do something specific. Your law degree gives you a basis of knowledge that spans across a number of industries, and you can choose how to use that law degree as you see fit. And I feel the same about an MBA. I feel that a law degree, although it teaches you how to think logically, how to create contracts, how to read the law, and how to interpret the law, it doesn't provide you a lot of the business acumen and starting businesses, investing in businesses, the financial aspects of businesses. So you can choose these vehicles and decide which paths you want to go to have this extra knowledge, if you will. And candidly, for me, I finished my law degree in 2016 and became licensed in Texas, and I've been doing that for a decade. But more recently, I enrolled in a business school program. And I'm really determined to expand my knowledge base and expand my business acumen in terms of really drilling down into understanding everything outside of what the law has taught me. And so I am a huge proponent of learning. I'm a huge proponent of continuing education. And I really do think that once you have the ability to have these skill sets, you can take them and incorporate into the things you love doing. So for me, it's polo, and I've used a lot of my law degree in drafting contracts, generating corporate sponsorship, doing all of that. Of course, my job funds my passion and my life. But, hopefully one day I'll learn enough about business to be able to have a business that does it for me that's related to polo in some regard.
I'm sure that dream is going to come true.
Right, exactly. So yes, I really am a big proponent of continued education. I am a really big proponent of getting a law degree because of the flexibility of it. But I'm also a big proponent of getting MBAs and just generally expanding your knowledge base wherever you can.
I think it's important. I think one of the things that I see a lot of kids have an issue with today is there's so much information on the internet, but there isn't really some place where they can actually get information. Like there's so much that there isn't. And
right.
Learning from other people or hearing stories from other people, I think is super important because it gives them an idea of, oh my gosh, this is something I could do. Or, right, what if I mix my law degree with my MBA? So giving options, I think sometimes is the biggest thing because you learn stuff, like things that you wouldn't have considered. I've learned a lot about law because of the people that I work with, but it wasn't because I studied it. It was, I work with attorneys. So I've little by little over the years gained some knowledge about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it'll be interesting how things change with, I say I'm this big proponent of education, which I am, but I do believe that formal education and formal jobs are going to change significantly because of the impact of AI. So how many more attorneys will we need to interpret contracts and draft contracts when you have an AI bot that'll do it for you? I don't have the answer. There are obviously barriers to entry because an AI bot can't show up in court for you. But it'll be interesting to see how future generations shift what school looks like for them and what skill sets are important. For now, it might be how to make an income statement, but in the future, it might be how to sit down and have a cup of coffee with somebody, how to communicate with people, how to use your words in a way that can properly express what you're feeling, because so many people are going to become so reliant on technology that general interaction and communication skills perhaps will falter. And that's something that, is not as easy to teach.
That's true.
You're hearing that from a communications professional, because I'm a professional news reporter. I've been on TV for 25 years now. And AI has replaced in many ways, even when you put your voice on a package for a newscast, or even some newscasters are now AI. But I think that human contact, it's going to be hard to replace, but also tough to make happen in the right way.
Without a doubt. And, you know, Danielle, I believe you're in real estate, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? There has to be an interpersonal element of generating clients, right? So is an AI bot going to go meet with your client and convince them that you're the best person to work with? I don't think so. Now, will they do all the transactional data and create spreadsheets for you and finalize the contracts? Perhaps. Yes, I feel like that's a lot more likely. But those interpersonal skills of just general business development and sales are going to be a little bit more difficult to replace, in my opinion, in my very uneducated, novice opinion of the potential of AI. But in terms of education broadly, I think interpersonal skills and learning how to network and work with people and communicate with people will be more important in the future, even more so than they are now.
We're out of time, and Danny, but I want to thank you for this time. I want to thank you for the production weight that we had today. Again, technology, AI, but we're still navigating through all of that.
Well, Pamela, thank you so much for being on the show today. And I don't know if there's any last comments you want to make before we sign off.
Just thank you guys for hosting me. I really appreciate it.
Where can people find you? And also, please remember to follow us. We're on Spotify, YouTube, and you can reach us also on our personal Instagrams that we're gonna drop them down here.
Perfect. I have an Instagram. It's just Pamela_Alina, which that is my middle name, but it's also my baby's name. So some people think it's a shared account. It is not. It is just my first name and my middle name. It is not my child's account. She's only 1.5 years.
Oh, that's so cute.
That's adorable.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great week and month if we don't touch base before. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.